That is one of 4 measurements that every single grading company that I'm going to be listing actually puts into account. They're going to be checking the centering of the card. They're also going to be checking the condition of the surface of the card on the front and the back. They will also be checking all 4 corners of the card and checking the condition of those. Then lastly, the condition of every edge on the card. Knowing that those are the 4 grading criteria, let's dive straight into PSA. Starting with a PSA 6, I bring up a PSA 6 because as soon as there is structural damage to a card, something that is almost not noticeable to the eye, whether it be a small warp in the card, a small bend, a small dent, a teeny tiny crease, that immediately makes it a PSA 6. It's something to be very aware of, and it's good to take a magnifying glass to your cards, because structural damage to a card is a big no-no when it comes to PSA. Overall, for a PSA 6, you're also going to be making sure that if there is a printing defect or any surface wear, that it doesn't detract from the overall appeal of the card. The centering can be as crazy as an 80-20, and it can also have the back centering be a 90-10. If you check out right here on the card, the top border of this card here is super fat and the bottom border of this card is very thin. Thus, it probably has an 80-20 centering on the vertical axis. When inspecting the surface of the card, they allow very light scratches only upon close inspection. The corners can have slightly graduated fraying, and also the picture can be slightly out of focus. There can be some minor stainings, and it can exhibit some slight notching on the edges. Moving straight into a PSA 7, which is actually the bottom requirement for a card to be considered near mint, and this will allow you to have slight surface wear visible only upon inspection. There may be slight fraying on some corners, and the picture focus may be slightly out of focus. Any minor printing blemish is acceptable. A minor printing blemish is acceptable. Slight wax staining is acceptable on the back of the card only. Most of the original gloss must be retained. Centering can be a 70-30, whether it's on the vertical axis or on the horizontal axis. The back of the card is very different. It will have leniency up to a 90-10, which means you can have 90% of the centering shifted upwards or either axis on the left or right. Straight into a PSA 8, this is a super high-end card that appears to be a Gem Mint 9 at a first glance, but upon closer inspection, the card can exhibit the following: a very slight wax stain on the reverse side, the slightest of fraying of 1 or 2 corners, a minor printing imperfection, and or slightly off-white borders. The centering must be approximately 65-35 on the vertical axis, and on the horizontal axis it could be a little bit better, and on the back it still has that 90-10 leniency as far as centering goes. PSA 9 is a superb condition card that exhibits one of the following minor flaws: a very slight wax stain on the reverse, a minor printing imperfection, or slightly off-white borders. So it means it can only have one of those factors, and if it has a combination of more than one, it will be knocked down another grade. The centering has a leniency of 60-40 on the vertical and horizontal axis for the front, and it still has that 90-10 or better centering for the back. Moving on to the infamous PSA 10. The attributes for this should include 4 perfectly sharp corners. The image must be in sharp focus, and the surface of the card must have its full original gloss. A PSA Gem Mint 10 card must be free of staining of any kind, but an allowance may be made for a slight printing imperfection, which means it is a non-human issue with the card. If a human made a slight alteration to the card, then it becomes a bigger ding to the card. But if it was something done during printing and manufacturing of the card, it can have a small allowance if it doesn't impair the overall appeal of the card. This is everyone's main issue with PSA. It leaves it up to the discretion of the grader. PSA gives your card to one grader, and they decide what your card gets as a grade. If they decide that, oh, it doesn't change the overall appeal of the card, then boom, you're a shoo-in for a PSA 10. If they decide, oh, this one small thing is enough for me to say that it's not a 10, then they can say, oh, it is a 9 now. The image must be centered on the card with a tolerance that does not exceed approximately 55-45 on the front and 75-25 for the back. One thing that PSA does that is different than every other grading company on the market, they will get each of the 4 grading criteria: the centering, the surface, the corners, and the edges, and they will give them individually a rating of 1 through 10. If 3 of those get a 10, but one of the 4 criteria gets a 9, your card immediately becomes a grade 9. They will grade it the lowest of the 4 criteria. So if you have 3 of them that score a 10 and your last criteria scores a 5, you now have a PSA 5, no matter how good the other bits of the card are. So always keep that in mind, and it makes it a lot harder to get a PSA 10 because that means every single bit of the grading criteria must be perfect. The only thing they are lenient on is the front centering and mostly the back centering on the card, with a 75-25% split on the vertical and horizontal axis for the back. That is a huge off-centered back centering, and the front has a 55-45 centering, so it gives you a 5% leniency to determine if it is a PSA 10. This can be a little bit more than 55-45% on the centering because it's up to the grader's discretion to determine whether or not it changes the appeal of the card. If they decide that it doesn't, you now have a Gem Mint 10. During the grading process, PSA will inspect your cards for any evidence of tampering. This includes trimming. So sometimes, in order to make your picture on your card look a little bit more centered, people will try and trim an edge of the card to then make it closer to a 55-45 split. But if your card's dimensions do not meet the standard dimensions for that type of card, you then will not be able to have your card graded because there is obvious trimming or tampering of the card. Other things that are considered tampering are recoloring. Sometimes, specifically with Pokémon cards, you will see whitening on the blue edges on the back of cards. People have always wondered, oh, what if I find a perfect color that will allow me to fill in that whitening and make it look like the color is seamless? Well, turns out there isn't really a color that matches or application that matches, which is really, really good. But PSA is also very, very well versed at catching those type of alterations, so they will not grade the card if it has been tampered with in that way. Restoration is another one of these forms of tampering, and that could be polishing, it could be, there's a broad spectrum of things. I think the only thing this does not cover is actually cleaning the card, because I believe you should be able to just clean the surface of the card, and I think they agree as well. If you just have some sort of like alcohol type of spray and you clean off dirt on the front of the card, that's totally valid, totally worth it. And I think they don't have any problem with actually just cleaning the card itself. Any other forms of tampering or are of questionable authenticity will also make your card subject to not being gradable. Next, we move on to a company that grades the second highest volume of cards per year. It is CGC Cards. And starting straight up with the Near Mint 7, it allows for a small touch of wear on 3 or more corners and or slightly rough edges. A slight diamond cut is allowed, and a very slight wax staining is allowed on the reverse. For sports and non-sports cards, centering must be a 70-30 or better. So they're pretty lenient on the centering when it comes to CGC. They have a grade that's a little bit more exclusive when it comes to finer tuned centering on a card. For a 7.5, you actually only can have damage on 2 or 3 of the corners or slightly rough edges. You cannot have a combination of the both of them, and it cannot be 4 corners that have damage. It will be 2 or 3 corners or slightly rough edges. The image may be slightly out of focus, a slight diamond cut is allowed, and a very slight wax staining is allowed on the reverse. TCG cards could have a moderate defect or a number of small handling defects. So there's a little bit more leniency here when it comes to defects and small issues where, you know, just you're a little too rough with the card in a specific instance and it just gets a ding. And so they're a little bit more lenient with that, giving it a 7.5. The centering for these on the front and back is a 65-35. For a Near Mint 8, that must have relatively smooth edges with only minor touches of wear. It must have original color borders and gloss. one of the following very minor flaws is allowed. So no combinations of these flaws, just one very minor of the following damages. Corners are sharp to the naked eye but reveal slight imperfections under magnification. A small amount of minor print spots. Subtle focus imperfections of the image. A very slight diamond cut is allowed, and TCG cards could have a small to moderate handling defects. For sports and non-sports cards, the centering must be a 65-35 or better. So in all of those listed defects or issues with the card, it could only be one of those. It cannot have multiples of those. For an 8.5, it must have relatively smooth edges with only minor touches of wear. It must have the original color, borders, and gloss. And one of the following minor flaws is allowed. Corners are sharp to the naked eye, but reveal slight imperfections under magnification. A small amount of minor printing spots and subtle focus imperfections on the image. So that means only parts of the image are out of focus and the other ones are more in focus. A slight diamond cut is allowed, and TCG cards should show small handling defects. Moving on to the Gem Mint 9. It must have 4 sharp corners with only minor wear visible. Slight minor flaws on the edges may be visible. The surface must have all original gloss. However, a small number of specks or one minor spot or surface defect is allowed. For TCG cards, the cards will have only a few minor manufacturing or handling defects, so not a combination of both. A few minor manufacturing or minor handling defects. For sports and non-sports cards, the centering must be 60-40 or better for the front of the card, and this has that 90-10 leniency for the centering on the back of the card. For a 9.5 Gem Mint card, it displays premium to the eye's first appeal. Qualities such as exceptional centering, surface qualities, color, and other key elements can elevate this card to a Mint plus 9 grade. So it's essentially everything from the Gem Mint 9 with just a little bit more fine tuning to it. So what is the grading criteria for a Gem Mint 10? Well, a Gem Mint 10 is a card that has received a 10 grade overall. However, one of the grading criteria does not meet the requirements of a pristine 10. Corners will appear perfect to the naked eye and a Mint plus under 10x magnification. The surface is free of print spots and should also display perfect glossing, devoid of any surface flaws. Centering will not exceed a 55-45, and the reverse centering is not to exceed 75-25. All in all, this is the exact same grading criteria for the PSA 10. This is everything that the PSA 10 requires, and so they're pretty on par as far as standards. Next, we have one of the more elusive grades that CGC offers. A Pristine 10 is a virtually flawless card to the naked eye, with a centering that is perfect at a 50-50 split on the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. And the card will have flawless color and registration, meaning it is perfectly colored. Sometimes whenever these cards are being printed, a printer will run out of ink, thus it will be faded, or it will have some stuttering and there will be some printing defects. There will be no printing color defects, and registration refers to how in focus the card picture is. That means this has a flawless in focus picture. All cards that merit a CGC Pristine 10 grade will receive a specific CGC Cards Pristine 10 label. This is a fancy looking label that is black and gold and looks really, really good. So it has all of the grading criteria of the Gem Mint 10, but it also has a perfect 50-50 centering on the front and back. We talked about how PSA grades their cards, and when someone receives it, it's up to their discretion to decide if the card has been tampered with. Then ultimately they grade the 4 criteria, and if one of those is a specific grade, whatever is the lowest, that is the grade of your card. When it comes to CGC, CGC has an 8-step method to grading your card. The card is received in a submission, It is opened by trained CGC card staff under security cameras and immediately checked against the submission paperwork to make sure that everything is legitimate. You paid to have this card submitted and you didn't send a different card, or whatever may happen because human error is very much a thing. The submission is then entered into the CGC card's proprietary tracking system with a unique submission number. This helps them not say, oh, this is a Lugia that arrived on Tuesday at 2 p.m. They'll say, oh, this is order 276,000. And that way they can track 276,000 throughout the entire grading process. Moving on to the second step is the verification. Each card gets a more detailed review to confirm that its description matches the information provided by the submitter. A unique ID and barcode are assigned to track the card throughout the entire CGC card's grading process. At this stage, the card is separated from the submission paperwork so that the CGC card's graders don't know the submitter's identity. This helps to ensure complete impartiality. This is actually a very awesome way to go about it. Think about really, really big YouTubers or influencers or people who have a lot of clout in the space. The level 99 Deep Diglett, Deep Pocket Monster. He's amazing. I love his content. He, if he submits a submission to a grading company and they say, oh, it's Pat Flynn. I know Pat Flynn. I like Pat Flynn. My kids watch Pat Flynn. I'm going to make sure that his cards get preferential treatment. I'll overlook small defects. I'll overlook small damages and give him better grades because I like Pat Flynn. So disconnecting the identity of the submitter from the order itself, I think, is very important when it comes to integrity and putting your reputation on the line and saying these people are being honest in giving this grade towards this card. For step 3, we have authentication. Cards are stored in CGC Card's vault until they are ready to be reviewed for authenticity. If a card is determined to be genuine, it will be graded accordingly to the market-friendly CGC Card's grading scale. Note, a card will be rejected for grading if it is of questionable authenticity. So I feel that every grading company should be doing this, so it's really good they do have a clear step in the process where they make sure that the card hasn't been tampered with, this isn't a fake card, there's no faux pas going on, and they make sure in step 3 that they are going to be grading a legitimate card. Now, CGC is one of the companies that does grade error cards, so there's a bit of a gray area where some cards are, it's hard to know if they're legit, and they have to use a lot of analogous story that's going on. For instance, there was a huge scandal with the printing cards. They were playtest cards that were supposed to be from the 1990s era. They were initial cards that were printed with a Xerox machine so that they could playtest the game before they started actually having an industrial scale printing of these cards. There was a batch of these cards that had came out, I think it was last year or almost 2 years ago now, and CGC got the cards as submissions, they graded them, said they were legitimate, and then they passed them out and people bought them and they were traded all about, and someone actually cracked the slab and went into the, if you didn't know, Xerox actually puts a printing code whenever they print anything, and the Xerox machine that had printed those cards had a date on it that was like 2019 or 2020, which means they were not from the 1990s and they were completely illegitimate cards. So error cards are one of those things where it's awesome whenever you have a super off-centered cut card and you have someone that can authenticate that it's a real deal, real card, and it gives it some value for people who like to collect errors. But in those instances where it's a niche error that's not really known, you have some sort of issue where if they give the green light and people spend a lot of money for them, they now are kind of held liable for those situations, which is something to just keep in mind, and it's something that has definitely damaged CGC's reputation over the past couple of years. Moving on to step 4, the grading process. Card grading is a team effort with multiple CGC Cards professionals examining every card aided by advanced technology, ensuring the highest level of accuracy and consistency. Each grader enters their grade into CGC Cards' proprietary system. A consensus is then reached on the final grade of the card. TCG and non-sports experts evaluate those types of cards, while sports card experts evaluate sports cards. This is an amazing way to go about grading. I find this super transparent and I appreciate that a lot. It's one of my biggest issues with PSA, but they're grading millions of cards a month, whereas, CGC does, I think, 400,000 a month. So the amount of work that they have to do is vastly different. But when you then have taken away the identity of the submission, then you have a team of people who are experts in that field of card, inspect the card, then they all put in, say the first person says it's a 10, the next person says it's a 10 pristine, and then the next person says it's a 9. And then after everybody in the team puts in their grade, they all come to a consensus. I'm pretty sure by putting an average of everybody's grade that was on the team, then that is the final grade of the card, which I think is actually fairly legitimate. It lowers down the potential human bias that happens. Say someone's eyes aren't that good that day. They didn't sleep that well. Say they had a rough night and they're kind of in a grumpy mood. A lot of things happen externally that change our decision making on a day-to-day basis. That can happen individually, and having a whole team of people to help check and balance that type of variable in human psychology and sociology, I think is very important. And it would be really cool if PSA had something like this. But again, the volume of cards that they're handling would not allow them to have 10 people check out the exact same card. It's a very difficult thing to do. Moving on to step 5, encapsulation. After grading, the card and a label bearing its description, grade, cert number, and a QR code is inserted into the CGC cards holder, which is a crystal clear and provides superior long-term protection. Numerous security features in both the holder and label guard against counterfeiting and tampering. Now, I have some CGC slabs that I won for free. They're of just like some nonsense. Like one of them's like Pokémon postage stamps and stuff like that. I do like how clear these slabs are. Like my PSA slabs they're kind of cloudy. I don't know why they do this. Like there's a lot of cloudiness in the frame itself, but the card is, clear and you can see it very well, but the cloudiness, it just kind of throws me off. And I hate that the label up here is white and red. The fact that this is just a huge eyesore really does bother me. Other than that, it's very, very durable and I do appreciate it a lot. I just wish that it wasn't so cloudy. And what I do like about the CGC slabs is they are very, very clear, and black and white is less of a in-your-face color scheme that can detract from the card itself. Moving on to step 6, imaging. CGC cards images all graded cards after encapsulation. Check the legitimacy of a CGC certified card. These images are available to view 24/7 on the CGC Cards website using the Verify CGC certification tool. CGC Cards also offers premium high-resolution digital imaging as an add-on service for submissions. This is essentially for cert checking to make sure that you're not getting a counterfeit slab, to make sure that everything is legitimate and there's just no shenanigans going on. There's a lot of people that were cracking PSA slabs and then just putting any random card inside of there, and it's just really good to get some sort of backtracking to make sure, oh, this card looked exactly like this at this point in time when it left CGC or PSA or whatever the case may be. Step 7 out of 8, they go into quality control. A CGC Cards quality control specialist carefully inspects the card, label, and holder. All of the certification details are reviewed for accuracy, and the holder is checked for any defects or contaminants. So all in all, you're having a lot of situations where other companies, they're just grading such a high volume of cards. Oopsie daisies do happen, and cards are coming back from PSA with damage on them. Cards are coming back from Tag with damage on them. I believe I saw a Beckett 10 Pristine, not the black label. It came with the card upside down inside the holder. Super crazy that made it through, checks and quality checks and stuff like that. There's other instances where the card is just, backwards, or it's cut inside of the casing itself. It'll be pinched on a corner. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. I've even seen debris stuck inside of the slab that's in front of the card, which is just visually an eyesore. So quality control in step 7 is something I think is very vital to the entire process of grading. Keep in mind, we're all humans and we all make mistakes, and even if everybody does what they're supposed to, there's going to be some times where things don't work out the way that they should. Just like all of the examples I just mentioned, there's going to be some times during quality control that the specialists that carefully inspect all of the cards are going to miss something. Lastly, for step 8, packaging and shipping, fully encapsulated cards are individually counted and checked against the original submission paperwork. Cards are then securely packaged in a sturdy cardboard box with protective packing materials. The CGC certified cards are now ready to be sent back to the submitter. Then they are sent in these individual dividers with bubble wrap over the top, and they make it back to you. For our third big kahuna of the entire grading space, we have Beckett Grading. Beckett was recently acquired by a company called Collector. Collector also owns PSA, and they also own AGS. So now you have one big company that owns 3 grading companies inside of the entire grading space. Now this is a very new type of situation because Collector recently acquired Beckett. It's very, very recent. I'm sure everyone saw the headlines when it was happening, but given that that's the case, I don't know how Beckett's standards are going to be changing, and it's a little bit discouraging because I do like what Beckett does as far as offering a black label and a gold label, and even their silver labels look really good. But if they're going to just be PSA in disguise or AGS in disguise or whatever the case may be, it's very discouraging to have, oh, do you want to have your cards graded by Collector, or or you can have them graded by CGC or tag. So it just gets rid of a lot of the, it's the illusion of choice. It may be PSA, it may be BGS, it may be AGS, but the illusion of choice is, it's not a choice at all. It's all the exact same company. So I don't like that. But these are the current standards of Beckett grading, starting with the requirements for a BGS 7. This allows for a 65-35 centering on the vertical and horizontal axis for the front of the card, and allows for a 90-10 leniency on the back. Very slight diamond cutting is allowed, and the corners will have very minor wear on 2 or 3 corners. So only 2 or 3 corners, not a 4th corner. The edges allow for slight roughness, minor chipping, and very minor notching all across the edges. The surface allows for a few noticeable print spots or minor speckling is allowed, minor color and focus imperfections, very minor border discoloration, a very minor wax stain on the back of the card, the solid gloss with a few minor scratches detectable upon close inspection, and a few metallic print lines. So all in all, for the 7, there's a lot of leniency as far as just general small minor issues and imperfections for the surface. They just kind of all culminate into an overall issue, but they do allow for a lot of minor ones. If there happens to be a more significant one along with a bunch of minor issues, I believe that will, drop your grade significantly. Moving on to the Nearmint 8, it allows for a 60-40 split on the centering for the vertical and horizontal axis for the front, and it then chokes up to an 80-20 centering on the back. The leniency is now 10% less for the back for a Gemmint 8. The corners should be sharp to the naked eye, but with slight imperfections allowed under very close examination. I'm assuming that's under, extreme magnification. Then they see, oh, it's got significant fraying or issues along the corners. The edges should be relatively smooth, and specks of chipping can be visible to the naked eye. That is completely allowed. The surface can have a few minor print spots, very minor color and focus imperfections, solid gloss with very minor scratches detectable only upon close inspection, or a subtle metallic print line. So again, they allow for a lot of this, minor defects, and I believe it's just a total encapsulation of what the surface looks like, and that's what they do to determine the surface's overall grade. And they really are lenient with these print spots and the picture being out of focus, and also the gloss having minor scratches. I think that's completely reasonable because it even clarifies that it's upon closer inspection, which leads me to believe the scratches are only visible upon magnification. For the BGS 9, I just really like these silver labels that they have. Again, the slab itself is clear, which I appreciate. The centering allows for a 55-45 for the front centering and a 70-30 for the back. Again, 10% less leniency on the back, and the centering is now demanding the criteria that PSA and CGC require for a Gem Mint 10. That is 55-45 as far as centering. The corners will be mint upon close inspection, but slight wear is allowed under normal scrutiny. So I'm assuming close inspection here doesn't mean under magnification. And I believe, I don't know why this wordage seems this way, because before close inspection led me to believe under magnification, but normal scrutiny, if you can see light wear, then it would not look mint under close inspection. So I'm not exactly sure why the wording is the way that it is. I believe that if it looks fine to the eyes and mint, if you put it up to your eyeball, it looks fine. But if it has slight wear under magnification, I think that is what they're talking about. The edges will be virtually mint to the naked eye, and unobtrusive specks of chipping on the borders are allowed. The surface, a handful of printing specks or one minor spot is allowed. Very minor focus or color imperfections. Clean gloss with one or two tiny scratches barely noticeable to the naked eye. One faint, unobtrusive, metallic print line is allowed. So they're way more strict on the surface imperfections whenever you reach the 9 scale. They allow for a small amount of printing specs. It says a handful, so 3, 4, maybe even 5 small printing specs is allowed. And then notice this distinction. It says or one minor spot. That means you can have a really large imperfection that's a printing error, or a couple of specks scattered about, not both, and it can't be a lot of specks. They also allow for very minor focus or color imperfections. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes the printer gets a little low on ink and the color will be a little bit faded, or the pictures can come a little out of focus. Clean gloss with 1 or 2 tiny scratches is very strict, because they even say it's barely noticeable to the naked eye. I believe it's a little subjective, because some people have just really bad eyes and they don't necessarily know, but I believe if you're in this field, you're very aware of your, capabilities, and if you're able to see things very well visually, and if you need visual aid, that will be given to you. When it also mentions an unobtrusive metallic print line, I believe it's, if you're going to have a metallic print line, it can't be through the center of the artwork. Maybe something on the very edge of the card, or off to the side could be allowed, but unobtrusive to me means it's not out there in the open across the main visual eye candy of the card. For a 9.5, it also shares the same centering criteria at 55-45 and 60-40 on the back. Again, a 10% restriction on the back centering, getting closer to what I believe a Gem Mint 10 or close to it should be. And it says the corners should be virtually flawless to the naked eye, with only slight imperfections allowed under magnification. So here's a specification where it says under magnification, can they see the slight imperfections? Edges will be virtually flawless to the naked eye, with only specks of wear visible under magnification. Again, another clarification saying under magnification, the edges will be virtually flawless. The surface is also virtually flawless to the naked eye, with a few extremely minor print imperfections visible under magnification. Deep color, devoid of registration or focus imperfections, and devoid of scratches and metallic print lines. So right here is the all stop. You cannot have scratches or metallic print lines if you want a 9.5 or better. Devoid of registration or focus imperfections also means the image cannot be out of focus in any way. I believe it is very clear and cut the way that they say it. I appreciate that a lot. Moving on to the 10 Pristine. The 10 Pristine requires a 50-50 perfect centering all around on the front. That's the vertical and horizontal axis. For the back, it requires a 55-45 centering split. This is as strict as a PSA front card centering. It must be 45-55, but this is for the back of the card to receive a BGS 10 gold label. The corners must be perfect to the naked eye and virtually flawless under intense scrutiny. I believe this also means under magnification. So to the naked eye, looking right at it, you're like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this card. This card is perfect. But if you pull up high-end magnification and go into scrutinizing the card very thoroughly, you will see there's some small minor defects that make it virtually flawless. You're like, oh, there's this one microscopic issue right here. The edges follow the same criteria, which are perfect to the naked eye and virtually flawless under intense scrutiny. The surface gets way more strict with no print spots, flawless color, and devoid of registration and focus imperfections. It's also devoid of scratches and metallic print lines. This is the type of criteria I expect if a card gets graded a 10. I don't care what company it is coming from. If it's getting a perfect 10, they're saying this card is perfect, it must have this strict of criteria. Moving on to the infamous black label, the BGS 10 Pristine Black Label. This is the card where if you had a $100 card and you send it to Beckett and it gets a black label, that card is now worth close to $10,000. The amount of value that a black label gives a card is absolutely astronomical. The criteria for a black label is 50-50 for the centering on the front, and surprisingly still a 55-45 for the centering on the back. The corners follow the same criteria as the 10, where it's perfect to the naked eye and virtually flawless under intense scrutiny. Lastly, the surface allows for no print spots, flawless color, devoid of registration and focus imperfections, devoid of scratches and metallic print lines. So all in all, I think it's almost the exact same criteria as the 10 Pristine. It says the only difference between a black label 10 Pristine and a gold label 10 Pristine is the gold label 10 Pristine allows for one small imperfection under magnification, resulting in one of the 4 grading criteria receiving a 9.5, and the rest are 10s in any combination of subgrade categories. So if you look right here in this image, you have a 10 for the edges, a 10 for the corners, and a 10 for the surface, but the centering got a 9.5. This gives it a 10 Pristine gold label, whereas if every single grading criteria gets a 10, it then gets the Pristine 10 black label from Beckett. Lastly, we have a grading company that's fairly new. They've been around for a couple of years, but given that the other companies I just spoke about are grandfathered in, they've been around for years and years and years and have a track record of success and all of their things that they've done. TAG is very, very new. And the reason TAG has rose into prominence is their method of grading is very different than others. I'm sure if you've heard anybody who likes TAG, they always boast about the AI program that analyzes cards, has its own scoring system, and then determines a grade for the card for that scoring system. But there's a lot of things that are going wrong when it comes to this grading system, and a lot of things that are going right when it comes to this grading system. I will be completely telling you every problem I have and why I don't think there'll be problems going into the future. Let's cover the bare bones of what TAG does. They give your card a score of 0 to 1,000. The computer analyzes everything about your card and then gives it dings that will then bring your score down from 1,000 until it ultimately reaches a score that it believes is completely fair for the card. If you reach a 990 to 1,000, so there's only a 1% margin of defect, you then get a Pristine 10. They allow for up to a 5% margin of error, and you get a Gem Mint 10. A Mint 9 allows for up to 10% margin of error, and then so on and so forth. A 850 to almost a 900 allows for an 8.5. If you want to look at it this way, an 850 is an 8.5. An 800 is an 8. A 750 is a 7.5. So if you think about it in 50-point increments, that is the grade that your card will get. When it comes to their grading rubric, starting with a Nearman 7 for TAG, their grading criteria allow for a 70-30 centering leniency on the front, and on the back may show a tiny sliver of the border, but it may not be miscut or have a portion of another card displayed. So they're very harsh on errors and other things along those lines. TAG does not like to grade errors which I understand considering the liability that CGC went through with them grading error cards and, authenticating something that was not authentic. For the corners, they still appear square, but multiple corners displaying fraying on the corner surfaces. A slight bend or hit on the corner that compromises the card's surface may be present. Larger artifacts of fray on the corner's edge are clearly visible. For the surface, a minor dent might now impact both the front and the back of the card. This is very important. It says a minor dent is allowed. When we were talking about PSA at the very beginning, any structural damage to a card immediately makes it a PSA 6. No ifs, ands, or buts. And that's if everything else is flawless. If you have a dent, a crease, a bend, anything, that makes it a PSA 6. Tag is less harsh on dents or physical damage that is to the structural integrity of the card. The surface also allows for multiple print dots or print defects throughout the card that are visible. The edges allow for minor notching, which starts to impact on the edge's surface, might become visible. Lifting on all 4 edges visible, and edge surface wear and chipping now completely visible. So this is just where the edges are obviously not perfect, and you can see it with the naked eye. Given all of this, if the AI determines it's not going to ding too much for the imperfections it sees, it will then give you the score within this range and give it a Gem 7. For a 7.5, it gives you a 2% less leniency on the centering at a 67.5 and a 32.5 for the front, and the back may have a tiny silver border, but it may not be miscut or have a portion of another card displayed. So again, very harsh on the cut or centering when it comes to the machine cut of the card, something you have no control over. If it's got an error where it's miscut, they're going to punish you very hard for it. For the corners will show a little bit more wear and may start to lose their sharpness. All 4 corners on the front may have touches where the stock has been compromised and are visible. Slight fraying on the corner surface will be present. For the surface, a very minor dent to the front of the card surface may be visible. All defects continue to become more prevalent. Multiple visible defects in and around the facial region, most impactful. So I believe if there is a main character on the card, if there's visual defects around what's going on in the main, artwork of the card, that is a more impactful, mark on your grade than if it was just on the outer edges of the card. For the edges, edge surface wear and chipping continues to worsen. Areas of fray become larger and more visible. More significant lifting to an edge or minor lifting on multiple edges are visible. The edges start to lose their smoothness and show a rougher appearance. For an 8, the centering is now moved onto a 65-35 leniency for the front, and the back now has a leniency of 95-5. Insanely lenient for the centering on the back. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but you're not going to be looking at the back of the card. If you're going to give it a higher grade, you should be, like every grade should say, if it's 65-35 for the front, it should also be 65-35 for the back. That's just my opinion. Again, they're very strict on the miscut portions for the back as well. For the corners, a corner may start to show minor wear. Other corners still appear to be square, but display light corner touches to the front. The back corners show a little bit more wear, so they allow for more damage to the corners on the back of the card than the front of the card. So this is the AI making a discretionary, it's almost like, a human saying, oh, the front is more visually appealing, so it has more impact on the card's grade if there's damage on the front versus the back. I believe if the front and the back should be treated the same. I don't care if I'm trying to get a pristine card, it should be pristine in all aspects. Whenever I'm doing things with my cards here at home, if I see one imperfection, I'm one of those type of people where every time I look at the card, I will notice that imperfection. So if I know that the back is, super messed up compared to the front, every time I look at the front, I'll see the back of the card in my head. So you guys might not be the same way, but I believe we should be way more strict when it comes to that type of criteria. Fray artifacts continue to become more visible and significant, while very minor areas of fill start to show under high resolution imagery. So they're allowing for some damage that is a little bit visible to the eye, but most of it is visible whenever they really zoom into the card. The surface allows for several defects mentioned above are present. The combination of any, depending on their size, area, and location, are all factors. Minor but larger areas of print imperfections are present. A minor roller line might be visible on the front or back. For the edges, edge surface wear and minor chipping is present on all 4 edges. Fray artifacts continue to become more visible and significant, while very minor areas of fill start to show under high resolution imagery. Slightly more tolerance is given to the back of the card where surface wear and chipping are present. Minor lifting of the edge may start to become visible. So again, even with the edges here, they're saying the back of the card is less important than the front of the card, and they're way more lenient on issues with the back of the card. For an 8.5, it then jumps to 2.5% more strict centering for the front at 62.5% and 37.5%. For the back, for sports cards, they now differentiate between sports and TCG. For sports cards, it is a 95.5 and the back at an 85.15. So again, a little bit more strict. I still believe that the front should be judged just as harshly as the back. For the corners still appear very sharp and square. Multiple light corner touches on the front where the stock has been compromised are visible. A small amount of missing stock may be present on the back corners. Fray artifacts become more visible. For the surface, multiple surface defects are presenting themselves. A small scratch penetrates the gloss of the card. Multiple refractor or print lines are present. Very minor scuffing may be present. Subtle focus imperfections might be present around the image or logos. For the edges, visible edge surface wear or light chipping on multiple edges on the front, and the fray artifacts may become more visible. So for the 8.5, it seems to be a little bit more strict, but they're still presenting it as, we're allowing, a scratch into the gloss of the card. There's a couple of print lines present. So I'm glad that they're actually saying what is allowed, and that every tier of grade, there is, a stricter leniency on the centering and so on and so forth. For the Gem Mint 9, the front image centered tolerance is a 60/40 and the back image centered tolerance is 90/10 for sports and a 75/25 for TCG. For the corners, they will appear sharp and square up to 2 very light corner touches where the stock has been compromised and are visible on the front of the card. So this allows for up to 2 issues with the corners that can even be visible on the front of the card. Multiple corner touches on the back will be present. So for the back, they allow for more than 2 corner issues for the back. More significant fill and fray artifacts are present under high-resolution imagery. So here they're saying under high-resolution imagery means they can zoom in very well, and when they zoom in, they see a lot more of the fibers of the cardstock start to fray outwards versus being interlocked and show that fine-tuned edge. For the surface, a larger and deeper pit may be present. This is very significant. We're talking about a Gem Mint 9, and it says a larger and deeper pit may be present. So this allows for structural damage all the way up to a Gem Mint 9 and tag. They just don't grade as harshly for actual physical dings in the card, which I think is not the best look. Other companies would be very harsh on that aspect, and for a computer to say, oh, well, it may be a small dent in the card, but it doesn't change the card at all. I believe a larger and deeper pit makes it sound more significant. If it's not visible to the eye, that's a different story. If I have to pull out a magnifying glass to see the dent, totally different story. But if I can see a larger and deeper pit visually, I believe that's a very significant issue. It may have 2 or 3 small pits and or a longer scratch not penetrating the gloss. So it will allow for very small pits in the card and a long scratch that doesn't penetrate the gloss of the card. That's pretty significant damage for a Gem Mint 9. It may have a light but present print line or a refractor line that runs the length of the card vertically or horizontally. During the Sword and Shield era, they had a lot of horizontal print lines that went across the entire length of the card. It is kind of nice that they are less harsh on print lines because that's something that you definitely have no control over, but I do believe if it goes through the main image of the card, it should be graded harshly. This also allows for minor print imperfections or multiple spots on the card. A small scratch that penetrates the gloss on the back can be visible, and multiple more visible print lines can be present, which is, again, it's when we're getting to the 9, 10, or 10 pristine, I believe a lot of this stuff should be taken off of the list when it comes to strictness. Edges. Visible but minor edge surface wear on 1 or 2 edges. More significant fill and fray artifacts are present under high resolution imagery. So for the edges, they're actually tightening up on the strictness for the edges for the 9. Wear on 1 or 2 of the edges is way better than allowing, just all this random willy-nilly damage on the edges. Going into the Gem Mint 10, this allows for a leniency of centering for the front for a 55-45, and the back allows it to be 70-30 for sports and a 65-35 for TCGs. The corners. A card will display 4 sharp corners, showing minor fill and fray artifacts. Very minor surface wear may be visible under high resolution imagery. To me, that means to the naked eye, you cannot tell that there is minor surface wear, but under intense scrutiny with magnification using high resolution imagery, you then can see that surface wear. A light but visible corner touch or 2 may be apparent on the reverse. So that means on the back side of the card, you can see a light, visible corner touch or 2 of them. However, even with those touches, the corners will still be sharp and square. The surface allows for an extremely attractive surface. A slight print imperfection may appear under high-res imagery. So if there's a printing issue when it comes to the card, it should only be able to be seen when, inspected under intense magnification. A very minor defect, such as a very small pit, light scratch that does not penetrate the gloss, or a light print or refractor line may be present. For a perfect Gem Mint 10 card, I believe there's no amount of leniency that you can allow for this. This is a little bit of a stretch, considering if it allows for this much leniency, the 10s should not be like, I don't know. This is, I feel very strange about this because a pit, a very small pit, it could be not visible to the eye, but scratching that doesn't penetrate the gloss or a light print or refractor line, you're dealing with something that you're saying is a really good looking card, a really Gem Mint, almost perfect card, and you're saying you're allowing for a small pit, a scratch that doesn't penetrate the gloss, or a light print or refractor line. Again, it's only talking about one of the 3 being, on the card. It says or, but I believe that there's just, it can't be visibly noticeable in any way, and to me, the way that they've described it makes it seem that it's visually apparent. Scoring is impacted by region, which means, again, if the damage is done in the center of the main artwork of the card, it's going to be graded more harshly versus the edges of the card. The back may have multiple print lines as well as a larger, deeper pit. I've already talked about how I don't like this. The back should be graded just as harshly as the front, but there are some instances where the back is the only issue that's wrong with a card. So there is some sort of gray area where I do believe, you don't have control over print lines at all. And if they're on the back, you get punished less whenever you send your card to tag. For edges, an edge may display minor fill or fray. Very minor edge surface wear may be visible under high resolution imagery. So right here, they've tightened up the screws when it comes to edges and the leniency on them. They can, have very, very minor fill or fray, and the surface can only have damage visible under high resolution imagery. Lastly, the 10 pristine, which is very, very hard to get. I believe this is just about as hard to get as the black label, because they only give you a 1% margin of error when it comes to the leniency on the centering of the front of the card. For sports, on the back of the card, they allow for a 54.5 and a 45.5. And for TCG, they allow for 52.48. So it's very close to their criteria for the front. That means the front has a 1% margin of error for centering, and the back has a 2% margin of error for centering. That is very, very strict. I appreciate that a lot. I like that a lot. For corners, a card will display virtually flawless corners, no visible wear or fraying. Under high-resolution imagery, the corners appear sharp and crisp with little to no fill or fray artifacts. That's really, really good. That's what I want to hear when it comes to strictness. If you're going to have a pristine or, a super legitimate, this is the grade above our highest grade type of tier, it should be this strict. Under intense scrutiny using magnification and high-resolution imagery, It has very sharp and crisp corners with little to no fill or fray. For the surface, it will be virtually flawless, exhibiting only non-human observable defects. This is something referred to as NHODs. So that means non-human observable defects means anything that a human can't possibly do. If it's something microscopic like the printing doing it, or something along those lines where it was obvious that it was a manufacturing issue and not a human did this issue, I believe that's what it's talking about, which is something that is not noticeable even under intense magnification. It's one of those things where AI is really good at noticing patterns. So we as humans created a system that recognizes patterns way better than we do. So the AI then recognizes patterns and classifies them as non-human observable defects. And that is what it classifies as not pertaining to an issue with the grade. For the edges, a card will display virtually flawless edges. Under high resolution imagery, the edges will have very minor fill or fray artifacts. I appreciate this. It's just as strict as the corners. And I think that the 10 Pristine has the right verbiage for what I expect as a 10 Pristine. The 10 definitely makes me a little bit upset. But again, I don't know. It isn't very obvious how visibly apparent these damages are with the other grading, diction that they were using on the other sites. They were very apparent with how severe this stuff was. It would say, to the naked eye, you can't see it, but under, high magnification, you could. There was no differentiation here other than the use of high-res imagery, which to me means they took a good picture and zoomed all the way in. So I don't know. I wish the verbiage was a little bit better. So they're all about transparency when it comes to tag. And I personally really like what tag is doing, but this is not enough information for me to feel confident in what they're doing and what exactly is their true grading criteria when it comes to a larger, deeper pit. What is that? How many millimeters is that? Is that how many micrometers? I don't know how big that is. They should clarify that, because what is a deeper pit? Does it go, so much depth into the card? I don't understand. So I wish there was more transparency with that, especially with a company that boasts about transparency and they give you all of your scans of your card whenever you get your card back. Lastly, I want to talk about the whole AI debate when it comes to tag. I wanted to bring this up at the very end because it's a little bit controversial. I definitely have my issues with tag. I definitely have my issues with PSA. I have my issues with basically after doing all of this research on my own for this video. I think CGC is quite honestly the most fair. They did have an oopsie daisies with those Xerox cards, and a lot of people don't find value in their slabs. But from the strict math, what their grading criteria is, their process for grading, the unbiased, they take the name away from the grades. I think CGC is the most fair. That's just my opinion from my research alone for this video. But when it comes to tag, what I've noticed, I use Gemini for my content creation to help me, structure outlines for videos and work on intros for videos and other things like that. How should I go about a thumbnail, and what should I, structure a thumbnail to look like? And because I'm really bad at it. So Gemini generally helps me with that kind of stuff. Gemini is the Google program AI software, and Gemini 1 was really bad at it. Gemini 2 was kind of okay at it. Gemini 2.5 was really good at helping me with what I'm doing now. And Gemini 3 is even better at helping me. So when we're looking at tag as a company, they have a grading software that can only get better when you feed more knowledge to it. So as tag grades more cards, they are going to be able to make their software better. There's a very infamous and very well-viewed video where another YouTuber actually got cards that they sent from PSA. So they got like PSA 4s and PSA 5s from PSA and sent them to tag, and tag graded them 9s. And then they got the submission back, cracked open them, and then sent them back to tag again. Tag then gave those cards 4s, 5s, because I believe, and the main reason this happened is these cards had creases or, gouges in the card that PSA said structural damage, that's a 6. And then with all the other factors, it then bumped its grade down even more. And after the second submission that was sent to tag in this video, the tag algorithm or AI software recognized those crevices, creases, bends in the card, and then gave it a proportional grade to the damage that was done to the structural integrity of the card. I believe that is a perfect example of the AI getting better over time, but that can only happen by submitting more and more cards. So given that they now have some sort of foothold in the entire grading space, they will continually have their software get better and better at catching these things. I recently saw a couple of Reddit posts. Again, they're Reddit posts. I'm going to test this myself, but what has been presented is someone had gotten a tag slab that was graded from tag, and then they cracked it and sent it to PSA. PSA sent the card back saying that it was a tampered card, and there was evidence of trimming on the card's edge. That's a very serious issue. If you have an AI program that can't detect if a card has been trimmed, that's super bad, because now someone can get a altered card that's worth nothing because it's now been trimmed, send it to tag, make it have value, and then sell it for money. Super shady. Don't like that at all. The other thing that I saw, another tag post, had someone say whenever they have issues with the back of their Pokemon cards, they just get a blue Sharpie and hit it with blue Sharpie, and then tag's computer can't tell what the damage is and just says it's a printing error or just overlooks it. That's also a very big issue. Now, that person showed no evidence of the claim. The other person had a full-on PSA submission and showing that the card was trimmed, and then them cracking the slab that was a tag slab. So I'm going to be sending an order to tag, but I'm also going to be doing something where I trim one of the cards that I send. I'm also going to be putting a dent in one of the cards, and then I'm going to be putting a dent in the back of one of the cards and hitting it with some blue Sharpie. And I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to test it myself. So if you guys want to see me test it, it's going to cost money. Tag only allows submissions of 10 cards or more, and that's even in their cheapest plan. And I think that's like $170 with no insurance on your cards, which I'm going to be paying for insurance, and all the shipping costs and all that other stuff. So given that is the case, definitely support the channel. Give me a like, give me a follow, give me a subscribe if you want to see that. Comment down below, and help push my stuff to be more successful so that I can do things like that for you guys. I'm definitely going to be making a video on that return and showing if they caught my tampering of those cards, and I hope that they just don't ban my account afterwards. So we'll see what happens with that. And I think as time goes on, Tag's grading system AI program will get better, but that does raise a question. Do early certifications of Tag 10s mean they are less valuable because the AI was really bad at picking up those kinds of issues? Does that also mean that the Pristine 10s make them less valuable? I believe that has some very valid points to that side of the argument. You have a program that's not that good at determining factors that make sure that the card is in pristine condition, yet it's giving it a pristine 10 grade. So I believe it's great what it's doing for the grading community, but I don't believe it's in a place where it's better than any other company, or quite honestly, close. But it's getting there, and I have faith that it will be there in the future. Just, it's kind of discouraging to read their grading rubric, read it out loud to you guys, and then hear those other claims that other people are making. So I'm going to be doing the science. I'm going to send my submission in. I'm going to tamper with some cards, see if they catch it. And if they don't, that's a big, huge red flag. And if that happens, I want you guys to share that video around so people are aware of what is going on. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys do like this video, definitely show some love. And I'm very appreciative of you guys' time. So before you guys send any cards to get graded, make sure you check with the grading criteria that's listed on their websites, or come back to this video, show me some more love, and I will break down everything from every single card's grading criteria, so that way you know if your card is going to get a 10 or not. Thank you guys very much. If you want to see a video where I cover 10 cards that are under $10 fresh in the month of January, definitely click on the link on the screen. I'll see you guys next time.